Thanks for joining the team. I want to sit here and talk to you about something.
Okay.
Andrew, I need your help, buddy. It's getting pretty bad. Something's got to be done. I don't know what. Brad's gone. Todd. It's all grits and roll tide in there.
Yeah.
But I'm asking you to help me.
I think I have the solution. Gentlemen, let's start the show. Hello and welcome to Above the Curve. I'm your host, Andrew Shrout. I'm here with Brad Nelson.
Hello, everybody.
I'm here with Todd Anderson. And there's been some weird stuff going on here in the studio. When I got here today, there was a broomstick with Glenn Jones's face on it.
We don't know nothing about no broomsticks, do we, Brad?
Nope, not a clue.
Is that like a voodoo doll or something?
Nope. We don't know nothing.
Might be a replacement if you're not good enough.
I plead the fifth.
Okay, well, I do not want to be a broomstick. I want to be a real boy. so we're going to get started.
All right.
We're preparing for the Invitational that's this weekend in Charlotte.
It's right now.
It is going on right now. We're not there, but we are there. It's weird. I won't get into that. But we are looking to get ready for some Legacy rounds. There are going to be 8 rounds of Legacy.
Thankfully, I only have to play 6 of them.
Oh, because you have 2 buys?
I do
That's
have 2
weird.
buys,
I've had
yeah.
2 buys for every tournament I've played in the last 2 years or whatever, so, you know.
Well,
Hold on, can I do both sleeves since you were doing one sleeve? You know?
Well, I mean, I didn't know they gave away, 2 buys at all the Pro Tours that you missed.
Wah, wah. You guys probably think you're pretty cool with your 2 buys. I have 16 buys. I'm going to be undefeated at this tournament.
That's awesome.
What up?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about some Legacy decks. I'm going to start with the Boogeyman, the insectile Boogeyman of Legacy.
Dude, he's scary. Have you seen that picture?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, a lot of limbs and wings and a thorax.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I'm referring, of course, to Delver of Secrets and its flip side, Insectile Aberration. Todd, what do you think is the best variant of Delver right now?
Personally, I'm a huge fan of just straight Rug Delver, the classics with Stifle, 4 Dazes, 4 Wastelands, just trying to do everything you can to disrupt the opponent in the early game when you just land any creature and just ride it to victory. I think Lightning Bolt is the best removal spell you can have in a Delver deck simply because it's versatile enough to be able to kill most creatures that you would need to kill, but also later in the game you can just dome your opponent with it instead of having like a dead removal spell stuck in your hand against various combo or control decks. I think that Tarmogoyf is a great creature to have in the deck, and so alongside like Tarmogoyf, Delver of Secrets, and Nimble Mongoose, like you don't really need anything else. And all the decks trying to play more threats like True Name Nemesis and Stoneforge Mystic are just slowing their deck down and making things like Wasteland much worse. When you play something like True Name Nemesis, you don't really want to Wasteland your opponent on turn 2 because then you probably won't be able to get to the point where you can actually cast it. So lower your curve, play cheaper spells, kill your opponent with Rug Delver.
I actually kind of disagree with that, but not too much. The only issue I have is I also agree that Rug Delver is just the most streamlined version of Delver because the spells just work really well together and the deck just flows. But with the new decks with True Name Nemesis, there's this issue where before you would have a Nimble Mongoose and that would be good enough, or Tarmogoyf would be good enough. But because True Name is a card that exists along with other removal spells that tend to get played with it, the games sometimes slow down to where you can't win with those creatures. You always have to win with your Delver, and the games get really convoluted. So I like that these decks, maybe they don't look as great with Daze plus Hymn to Turok or Wasteland plus True Name, but you need to have a different way to attack the game, so they might not be the cleanest cut path to victory, but they're just needed to have more tools than just Nimble Mongoose.
I mean, I agree with that. I think the True Name Nemesis on the opposing side of the field is a pretty big problem for Rug. Like, the colors just don't have access to a spell or a series of spells that can actually handle it, other than, just being able to counter it with like a Daze, a Force of Will, or keeping them from being able to cast it with things like Stifle and Wasteland. That actually is like your main way to deal with it, is to just try to keep it off the table for as long as possible, do as much damage as you can early on in the game, and then hopefully you have enough threats in play that can either attack through it, or with Delver you can fly over it. You might want to invest in a threat that's better than Nimble Mongoose against True Name Nemesis. I haven't really found one yet other than maybe like Young Pyromancer, but then why would you not just play another color, because you're already playing, then you're like upping the cost of your threats, and then you start to just turn into the same, like there's no reason not to just play the other versions of the deck. So
I agree.
Okay. We covered Delver. Let's talk about a different flavor of blue deck. This is Invitational. Invitationals tend to draw the best players. The best players tend to be drawn to control decks. So and in particular, we know some players that are very well known that have done well on the Invitational series in the past. They like Shaheen Sarani, for example, has been playing Esper with 4, I believe, top 8s, all with
Only 4?
I think he's got 5
5 now, yeah.
so many I lost count. Sure, 5 top 8s, all with Jace, the Mind Sculptor. What do you guys think is going to be the most represented flavor of Jace deck?
I don't know. Todd?
Well, Famous Pan won the Los Angeles Open this past weekend with a really innovative bug deck. I wrote an article a few months ago when True Name Nemesis first came out, showcasing how you could build a bug control deck that didn't play Shardless Agent anymore, because things like Ancestral Vision aren't really as good as they used to be, simply because cards like True Name Nemesis invalidate half the cards in your deck. So it doesn't matter what card you draw, you just don't have the answers to it. So what he did was he didn't play Tarmogoyf, he didn't play Shardless Agent, he just played Deathray Shaman, True Name Nemesis, a Singleton Vendilion Click, and 3 Baleful Strix. And Baleful Strix being particularly strong right now because it's a threat, kind of, but it's also a creature that can draw a card while being able to trade with either a Flip Delver of Secrets or an opposing Tarmogoyf. And it also has the added benefit of being a blue card to being able to pitch the Force of Will against the combo matchups, since it doesn't actually apply that much pressure to your opponent. I think the deck was really powerful. It had 3 Lilianas, 3 Jace the Mind Sculptor, and just a slew of disruption that you see normally out of these bug control decks, or even like bug tempo decks. And it just looked really strong. And if people play with it over this, or if people have played with it over the last week and were able to get some testing on it, they would see that it's really good, and they should probably consider it for the Invitational.
I mean, I think that the Strix is very strong, but I do think that there's something more powerful in the format. Maybe has tentacles.
All right, well, that's actually the next deck we're going to talk about. I know you're trying to segue into it.
Yeah.
Can
but,
only die to 15 squirrels.
Brad is a former Invitational champion. We're all very proud of you, Brad.
Thank you.
Brad won the Indianapolis Invitational last year with Sneak and Show.
Yes.
And that's the next deck we're going to talk about. Sneak and Show has been on people's radar for a while. It was the closest thing Legacy has seen to a dominant deck early last year. It's been slowly losing a little bit of popularity, but it's still very much a presence.
I don't know why, and I'm not even I didn't even want to segue into that to say that I won the Invitational. That deck won the Invitational for me. It was just that powerful, and I've never done well in Legacy without it. And I think that deck is just extremely powerful because it's just a deck that you can shove on. And one of the things that I've been noticing, at least when I'm watching the Opens, is a lot of the players play it too conservatively. Like, they just kind of sit back on their spells, try to find the perfect spot. And one of the things I've been saying a lot lately with the deck is I don't play it like a Delver of Secrets, I play it like a Goblin Guide. I probe them and just shove on all my spells and see what they have. And the way that I've been doing it, I've been going 7-2 in all my Opens, and I've been just liking the deck a lot. And I think it is just one of the most powerful effects in the format, mostly because you have to make them have it. And I'm going to be pretty convinced that no one's going to have it this week because everyone's got like a target on the Miracle decks and the Delver decks and all these things that you need to play answers to True Name Nemesis, and you need to have good game plans for all these things when Show and Tell costs the same mana and just wins the game.
Okay, so Brad's obviously going to say Sneak and Show, completely unbeatable.
Unbeatable, can't lose.
Todd, how do we beat Sneak and Show?
Well, it involves a solid clock and heavy disruption. The deck actually is very well built to be able to handle 1 or 2 points of disruption, simply because it can, like Brad said, just jam its spells early and then just draw, residual copies of those cards and, effectively just push its combo through, even though the opponent has that disruption. A lot of times against, a Delver deck, they can put you under a clock with things like Delver and Tarmogoyf to really, put you on the back foot and force you to draw very well in order to, fight through all their disruption. But if they don't draw enough of it, they're just going to fold. And really that's what Brad was talking about, is like, make them have it, make them have multiple copies of their Forces of Will, make them have, multiple Wastelands to interact with you while also having days to counter your stuff, and put you under pressure. And there's no real deck or strategy, I don't think, that just stone colds a Sneak and Show deck, because they have so many powerful cards and their deck is so fast and their sideboard is so well built to be able to deal with basically anything. So the deck is very good, but it is beatable, but mostly you just have to draw really well and have the tools at your disposal.
And my last point about this deck is, the one mistake a lot of people make is they try to do it with the permanents. They try to be cute and use the show and tells against the show and tell player. But that doesn't really work anymore now that Probe's available, and there's the ability to go show and tell, they play sneak attack, or you see that the spell, so they put Detention Sphere and you put sneak attack in, activate your sneak attack with Emrakul, get your sneak attack back. And so things like that don't work anymore. So you need the disruption. And if people are playing the Detention Spheres, things like that, it's going to be able to be beaten because of cards like sneak attack and the probes to be able to look at the hand before you go off.
Okay. So we've talked about 3 decks that are all brainstorm decks. They're all Force of Will decks. Now, I don't want to give the impression that Legacy is a one-note format. It's anything but. So the next deck we're going to talk about does not have any of those cards, does not have that color. I'm going to talk about Jund. So Jund, I believe, was the most played deck last week at the Legacy Open in Seattle.
That makes sense.
No, Los Angeles.
You're right. Sorry. Well, I actually think it was the most played deck in both tournaments. It was,
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, in Seattle and in Los Angeles. Not by a huge margin. Again, most played in Legacy is like it was 8%. You know,
Sure.
Legacy is so wide open.
The margins were so wide.
Yeah. But Jund's slowly sneaking up. Any idea why?
I mean, it's just a very powerful Deathrite Shaman deck that has a ton of disruption, though that disruption is very one-sided. They have discard spells with Thoughtseize, Hymn to Torok, and Liliana, but at the same time, decks like Sneak and Show or, other combo decks can just blank half of their ways to interact with you or more with Leyline of Sanctity. So Jund is a very strong deck. It preys on the other fair decks because it can play things like Punishing Fire, Grove the Burn Willows, but it also has access to the best removal in Liliana, Abrupt Decay, as well as the most efficient creatures in Tarmogoyf, Deathrite Shaman. So Jund is just a great deck to fight other fair decks, and it has the ability to interact with combo decks, but that interaction is linear, so it's easy to fend off.
I mean, it's also a great deck for new players in the format, and that's why I think it's a very good invitational deck. Not only does it prey on the control decks and the mid-range decks that people tend to play, but it also is something where you get to Thoughtseize your opponent, and you're like, oh, so that's what you're doing. And that was my biggest mistake in Legacy. All the time I was like, can I just play Probe in my Delver decks? And Jared's like, no. That's dumb. You don't need the training wheels. And I'm like, I do. I really need the training wheels. And I just need to know what's going on. My opponent will play land and I have no idea what's going on. And so I'm like, all right, I'll play a Goyf. And they're like, you're dead. I'm like, that was fun, good games. But yeah, I think that it's a great deck for the new players, especially the ones that qualified at the invitational qualifiers and standard, and also need to now play with a legacy deck.
Plus, Taiga is only $40 or whatever, whereas all the other ones are $300 or something.
Yeah, Jund a reasonable entry point, and has done fairly well at invitationals.
Yeah.
At the last invitational in Las Vegas, it put 2 players into the top 8 in the hands of Taya Steele and Eric Smith. So that's one that we know will show up. How popular do you guys think it will be?
One of the more popular decks, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like what you said earlier, Legacy is incredibly diverse as far as, different archetypes people will play. So it's not going to be some overwhelming percentage, and you don't
It's
have
not
to...
going to be 40%?
Yeah, you don't have to dedicate... Where did that number come from?
I don't know.
Might be 8. We'll go with 8.
I thought there was some joke that I was missing, but I mean, yeah, like you said, it's probably just going to be around 5 to 8%, just like every other deck. It might just be slightly more represented than anything else.
Yeah, and that gets us to our last point. We were looking for 5 decks. What we eventually decided was, to be completely honest about the way that Legacy really looked, the 5th deck that we're going to talk about is not really a deck, it's all the decks. The 5th deck is the kitchen sink. One of the recurring trends in Legacy is just how wide open it is.
I mean, I think it's great. One of the great things about not only being a Legacy player when I go to the Opens Invitations, but watching it at home when I'm not traveling, is that you get to see weird stuff online. Like when I watch on Standard, it's like, so am I gonna watch Esper versus Mono Black, or Mono Black versus Mono Blue, or Mono Blue versus Esper? Oh wait, there might be some Jund Monsters throwing in there. You know, it gets a little stale. But in Legacy, it's everything. Like you just see weird matchups, weird card interactions, missed Hollow Griffins. Like it's wild, and I love that not only do you get to play in these matchups and they're so weird and unique, but just you get to watch. So if you're at home, enjoy all the random Legacy decks.
Yeah, I mean, like for example, just a few weeks ago, we saw like Tom Ross, make the top 4 with Infect of all things, which was really cool. Something that we haven't really seen a whole lot of.
We got to see the interaction between Inkmoth Nexus and Humility.
Yeah, which was just hilarious. Just to watch the look on BBD's face when he died after casting Humility against a poison deck was just the best.
All you got to take from that is my boy Tom the Boss Ross was running blocks for me while I wasn't in Atlanta.
Yeah, and I mean, but like Brad said, Legacy is just crazy. Like you can basically do whatever you want as long as you have the tools to interact with your opponent, on very specific levels. Like BBD in that same tournament was playing, a Stoneforge mixed with Miracles deck that also played Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meat combo.
Along with the great Nambo that is Rest in Peace. Don't forget about that one.
I tried to get him to play something else out of the board, and he refused. Rest in Peace is too good. I'm just going to play it. But yeah, I mean, you can literally do whatever you want as long as you have access to powerful cards that can interact with your opponent in the ways that you want to interact with them.
Yep.
All right, fair. Todd, what is one deck that is off the radar that's on your radar?
Grim Monolith Strategies. Simply because I play against one of those like every 2 tournaments, and I never feel like I can ever beat a Lodestone Golem.
Why don't build me one? I'm in.
I mean, I'd talk to someone who's played with them before. I don't think I've ever actually cast Grim Monolith in a constructed tournament, so.
It's like my favorite card in the MTGO cubes.
All right. Brad, what about you? Anything that you think could sneak up on some people?
I think like Storm or Elves can. I think they're both good combo decks that are very difficult to play if you're not an Elf player or a Storm player. So like you don't get a lot of testing unless you're one of the best players that also tests with people. Those are the only people that know how to play against those decks. Like they're really tough to play and they're really interesting. And I think both of them in the hands of skilled players always do well at these events. So I would be very surprised if one, if not both of those decks have a strong finish this tournament.
Cool. Yeah, well, we've got at least...
Also, Dredge. I hate Dredge, and I just want... You remember that Dredge is a deck, and you play 4 Leyline of the Void in your sideboard.
I got 2 Tormont Scripts.
All right, I'm going to predict right now Dredge is going to win this invitation.
Yeah, I actually...
Taste it,
yeah, sure. It's going to win. Yeah, just because you said that. And no one's going to play Graveyard Hate.
I
Brad
hope
said.
so.
#2
TormontScripts.com.
2 Tormont Scripts.
Fair enough. There will be 8 rounds of Legacy at the Invitational.
Tormont Script, really?
And
why not Relic of Progenitus?
Because Goblin Guide.
Because YOLO? Yeah, whatever. Okay, sorry.
Dredge gonna win. We already know that now. But in the event that it doesn't, stick around, stay tuned. We're gonna have Legacy and Standard, plenty more coverage of the Invitational here in Charlotte.